How's it going, guys, and welcome back to the LAIR. And today we're going to be previewing and doing some deck tech for tomorrow's video, which is going to be historic best of 3. I call this one Gutter Thirst, but before we get into it, I just want to say if you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe. It's free to you and helps us out so much. Feel free to drop me a comment, talk about strategy, deck ideas, misplays. I read the comments daily. And if you have any friends or family that are into Magic, please share the channel with them. One last thing I'd like to say, if you're going to be a new follower or subscriber on either my Twitch or YouTube channels, once you've done so, just reach out to me in the chat or the comment and say something like, hey, I just followed or subscribed, and I can respond to you with an in-game code that you can use in Arena to unlock a mystery gift from Wizards. So very excited to be able to offer that, and thank you guys so much for watching. So this is going to be Mono Black, best of 3. So getting into it on the 1-drops. We have one copy of Bloodchief's Thirst at sorcery speed. Destroy target creature or planeswalker with converted mana cost 2 or less. If this spell was kicked, instead destroy target creature or planeswalker. I have one copy of Cling to Dust at instant speed. Exile target card from a graveyard. If it was a creature card, you gain 3 life. Otherwise, you draw a card. And then we can escape it by paying its escape cost and exiling 5 other cards from our graveyard. Running the full playset of Dread Wanderer. He's a 2/1 and he enters the battlefield tapped. And then we can pay his ability later on. Return Dread Wanderer from the graveyard to the battlefield. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery and only if you have 1 or fewer cards in your hand. Running the full playset of Fatal Push at instant speed. Destroy target creature if it has a converted mana cost 2 or less. And then Revolt, destroy that creature if it has a converted mana cost of 4 or less, instead if a permanent you control left the battlefield this turn. Running the full playset of Gutterbones. He's a 2/1, he enters the battlefield tapped, and we can activate his ability and return Gutterbones from your graveyard to your hand. Activate this ability only during your turn, and only if an opponent lost life this turn. Running the full playset of Knight of the Ebon Legion. He's a 1/2, and we can activate his ability, and he gets +3/+3 and gains Death Touch until the end of turn. And his static ability says, at the beginning of your end step, if a player lost 4 or more life this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Knight of the Ebon Legion. Running the full playset of Thoughtseize. It's a sorcery. It says target player reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it, and that player discards that card. You lose 2 life. The 2-drops are running 3 copies of Skyclave Shade. It's a 3/1, and it cannot block. And if it was kicked, it enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counters on it. And it has the landfall ability. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, if Skyclave Shade is in your graveyard and it's your turn, you may cast it from your graveyard this turn. On to the 3-drops are running the full playset of Murderous Rider. This is an adventure creature, so the adventure side swift end at instant speed. Destroy target creature or planeswalker and you lose 2 life. On to the top end, we have 3 copies of Rankle, Master of Pranks. He's a 3/3 with flying and haste, and whenever he deals combat damage to a player, choose any number. Each player discards a card. Each player loses 1 life and draws a card. Each player sacrifices a creature. And then finally, the full playset of Spawn of Mayhem. He's a 4/4 with flying and trample with spectacle. And at the beginning of your upkeep, Spawn of Mayhem deals 1 damage to each player. If you have 10 or less life, put a +1/+1 counter on Spawn of Mayhem. And then the lands we chose, we have the full playset of Castle Locthwain, 16 Swamps, and 4 Crawling Barrens. This card is absolutely amazing, especially against control decks. So the main idea is obviously it's an aggressive, low to the ground, pretty immortal, unless they have exile, aggressiveness that can just keep coming back and coming back and coming back. Cling to Dust is our graveyard hate. We have Bloodchief's Thirst in there as an additional removal spell for earlier late game. Fatal Push is the main creature removal. It's just such a great card, especially just being a 1-drop at instant speed that scales up with the Revolt if one of our creatures dies or if we can sack it, and vice versa. Knight of the Ebon Legion is just the essential black 1-drop in any aggressive build, in my opinion. Skyclave Shade, also one of those threats, and not only can it come back consistently without very much damage to us, but it can come back even bigger later on in the game, which is really crazy. Murderous Rider, once again, helps us destroy any other creatures or planeswalkers that we couldn't hit with our early removal. And then being that 2/3 life linker body can really sometimes come back and help us, grab that extra point or two of life to avoid dying or to be able to push in for that extra damage. Rankle is amazing in this deck because if we have, let's say, a creature we don't care about killing, we can have the opponent sacrifice a creature. If we have one of those creatures in our hand, we can just discard it because it's going to come back anyways. So we're hitting their hand and we're hitting the board. And then, of course, he still has his other lose 1 life and draw a card. And then Spawn of Mayhem. Obviously, we want to play this on turn 3. Curve out nicely. It's just such an aggressive threat at turn 3, a 4/4 flying with trample. And then they usually have to be worrying about at least 2 other creatures that we have. So turn 3, we're looking at what? 8 damage on the board at least. Very, very aggressive. So let's talk about the sideboard because this is going to be a best of 3. We have 2 copies of Agonizing Remorse at sorcery speed. Target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from their hand or their graveyard. Exile that card. You lose 1 life. So this is going to be for additional control builds. Maybe slot out some of our top-end creatures and put in the Agonizing Remorse to go into the hand extra hard. Legion's End at sorcery speed. Exile target creature an opponent controls with converted mana cost 2 or less, and all other creatures that player controls with the same name as that creature. Then that player reveals their hand and exiles all cards with that name from their hand and graveyard. So this is going to be for like goblins or your Lotus Cobras, anything that is 2 or less that you're running. They're going to be running 4 copies of, for sure. Noxious Grasp is just such a good card right now, especially in Historic, hitting all the Hydroid Krasis and the Uros, and being able to pick off a creature or a planeswalker and gaining 1 life for 2 at instant speed is amazing. This is where I start getting experimental here. I have 3 copies of Bontu's Last Reckoning. At sorcery speed, destroy all creatures, lands you control don't untap during your next untap step. Nobody really expects this in Historic Black, so I feel like it would really hit a lot of, especially in the best of 3, they're just not expecting it. Most people are expecting you to run like a Extinction Event, but we don't want to exile our creatures. That's the thing we want to destroy. Ritual of Soot would still mess us up, but it doesn't hit all creatures. This, obviously the only downside is the lands, but we have such a low curve and we're running 24 lands. I figured, why not? Let's just experiment with it and see if it's going to be good against aggressive decks. But anyways, we have 2 copies of Necromentia, sorcery speed. Choose a card name other than a basic land card name. Search your target opponent's graveyard, hand, and library for any number of cards with that name and exile them. That player shuffles their library, then creates a 2/2 black zombie creature token for each card exiled from their hand this way. This card is just amazing. It's kind of like Unmoored Ego for mono black. And then the added zombie thing is hopefully not minimal because it's only cards in their hand, not the other cards that we get rid of. So they only get a small benefit. But how often are you going to cast this and they're going to have 4 copies of that exact card in their hand? That would be nuts. So in that case, they would get 4 2/2s, but that's probably never going to happen. So I feel like this card, the benefits outweigh the disadvantages, so that's why it's in there, especially for control decks or for like combo decks like the goblins. This is another slot that I'm still not too sure about. Maybe getting fighting like mono red where we need some life gain. So I put him in there because his power scales up as the opponent has more cards in their graveyard. And we're looking to put a lot of cards in their graveyard, so Yeah, so he's going to be our late game stabilizer, flying, death touch, lifelink, can double as a blocker if we need to, or fly over and maybe get a planeswalker that we need to take care of. We have 2 copies of Leyline of the Void. It's an enchantment. It says if it's in your opening hand, you may begin with the game with it on the battlefield, and if a card would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. So this is going to be for your Sultai and your Uro and your Reanimator and anything that's looking to benefit off the graveyard. A lot of God Pharaoh's Gift decks running around, so could cause some issues. 1 copy of Cavalier of Night. This is another one that I'm not just experimenting with since we are running 24 lands. He's a 4/5 with lifelink, and when he enters the battlefield, we may sacrifice another creature. When you do, you destroy target creature an opponent controls, and when Cavalier of Night dies, return target creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So once again, this would come in. This could come in, in a more aggressive deck like Goblins or Gruul, something like along those lines. Help us stabilize, being able to kill one of their creatures, and then have this nice meaty 4/5 lifelinker. I would like to think would be good. So yeah, we're gonna try it out. So we have a 1.9 converted mana cost running 26 creatures and 24 lands. That is the deck tech for today. Be sure to tune in tomorrow where I will be doing the best of 3 matches. We'll skip the intro like normal, and we're just going to hop right into the matches. So yeah, hope to see you guys then. We'll leave it at that. I just want to say one more time, if you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe. It's free to you and helps us out so much. Feel free to drop me a comment, talk about strategy, deck ideas, misplays. I read the comments daily. And if you have any friends or family that are into Magic, please share the channel with them. And don't forget, if you're going to be a new follower or subscriber on either my Twitch or YouTube channels, once you've done so, just reach out to me in the chat or the comment and say something like, hey, I just subscribed or followed, and I can respond to you with an in-game code that you can use in Arena to unlock a mystery gift from Wizards. Other than that, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.